Good evening and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting for April 14th, 2025. Welcome, everybody. We are going to start out with item 1, the audience communications. I do not have any blue slips, and I do not see anybody who would wish to come before the board to speak this evening. So we're going to go ahead to item 2, Committee of the Whole, and that would be for me. And on the agenda tonight, we do not have anything, correct?
That is correct. We do not have any committee of the whole items, President Bradford.
Very well then. All right, we are going to move on to item 3, the Finance Committee. Mr. Johnson.
We do not have anything on the agenda. Mrs. Smith, anything?
No.
We have nothing, President Bradford.
Wonderful. All right, moving on to item 4, the Curriculum Committee. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Acosta, and I do believe we have some items. So we will start.
Yes, thank you, President Bradford. We do have 2 items this evening. Item 4A is 2025-2026 cooperative agreements, and we have Mr. Etu and Ms. Sproul here with us this evening.
Thank you very much, everyone, and good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, we do have our annual cooperative agreement memo, and this is an authorization to have a partnership with local or neighboring school districts or schools. Students who may come from those school districts or schools to our facilities, for instance, the Livonia Career Technical Center or the Livonia Transition Program. It's something we do annually. This is an opportunity, if available, for students, as I said, come to these 2 programs. For the Livonia Career Technical Center, we typically have about 30 non-Livonia Public School students who attend the Livonia Career Technical Center. That number has decreased as each year's gone on the last few years, as our numbers within LPS has increased for wanting into those programs. We have several wait lists as well. We're projecting about 20 students for next year outside of Livonia Public Schools, servicing 4 different school districts or schools at this point in time. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Sproul regarding the Livonia Transition Program.
Well, I am thrilled to talk to you tonight about the Livonia Transition Program. It's something I know you know I'm very passionate about, and something that's a real point of pride for Livonia Public Schools. So our transition program is there to service students who are 18 to 26 who were on a certificate of completion path through their high school experience. At the transition program, students work on building work skills, promoting independence, supporting educational goals, fostering community involvement, and connecting with adult services. So that's a lot that we pack into that little bit of time. Our program is designed to meet those post-secondary goals for our Livonia students, but what we find is when we open it up as a cooperative agreement, when we have a larger program, we're able to offer more opportunities that really individually meet the students' needs. Right now, we have 17 job sites, which includes 4 satellite classrooms that are classrooms in business partner locations throughout our community, and that's pretty fantastic. We have currently 33 Livonia students at the Livonia Transition Program and 28 cooperative agreements. So over the last 3 years, I'd say it's pretty balanced between Livonia students and cooperative agreements. And again, that just makes us be able to offer more and more options. I want to highlight some of the new job sites that we have this year. So we're taking on Laurel Park. We are there, yeah. Exactly. I can't say I mind visiting. So we have students working on job skills at Olga's, Marriott, and the Lecker Choco Treats, which, fantastic. Got to get your chocolate fix. We have students at our newly located Garfield Co-op Preschool, which, as you know, has moved back to Garfield Community School. We have a new relationship with Oratex, which is an auto industry supplier. They do plastic injection manufacturing, so that's a great opportunity. We have students at Catherine Drew Salon, Victory Toyota in Canton, and Victory Honda in Plymouth. So those are all new within the last year and a half. So that's pretty great. We have 17 job sites on the back burner as well that are available. We don't have students that are currently looking in those areas, so we really try to focus in on our job sites where our students want to be. Let's see. Outside of that, since June of 2024, so since our last graduating class, we've had 6 students exit our program with employment in our community. at Marshall's, Cedarbrook, Cantoro's, McDonald's, Mod Pizza, and Walmart. So those are great things right within our community. But that's not the end of the good news, because we're still here early in April, and we have several businesses that are in talks about hiring students from this class for the end of the school year. So it's really fun to be able to time it with that end, because we do a great celebration for that graduation and a certificate of completion. So sometimes our students like to hold out until they can go through that with their peers as well. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about a potential job site that we're in communication about, and that's with Ford Transmission. So that is very exciting for us that we're working with Ford. They've identified a small area, a small task that we're going to start with, and then our plan is to grow it from there. So that's just thrilling. Yeah. I could tell you more and more things about it. You know that I think so highly of the program. I'll tell you the teachers, Lauren Feigl, our administrator, our paraprofessionals, our related service staff, they all are very passionate about this program, and I'm thrilled to bring to you tonight the request for this continued cooperative agreement that really lets us shine with our program and offers so many additional opportunities.
Questions? Ms. Jarvis?
Thank you. Ms. Sproul, would you please send to the board and perhaps post on the district's website a list of all our community partners so that we can thank them and support them as well?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. That was something I did share out with you all last year, but there's been so much change with so many new business partners. So I would be thrilled to add that out. Just as a separate note to all of you, we do provide the businesses with a plaque or a sign that they can post in their business talking about their partnership with Livonia Public Schools and the transition program. So I would love to share that with you. Thank you.
Mrs. Burton.
That's okay. Mrs. Sproul, can you remind me, is this the program that we have housed at Schoolcraft? Because I know we have a few different kind of levels of programs for our kids once they're 18 years old.
I can't believe I didn't say that. Thank you, Ms. Burton,
That's
for
okay.
mentioning that. Yeah, so in addition to our 4 satellite classrooms in the community, we also have 3 classrooms on site at Schoolcraft College. So all of our transportation happens through Schoolcraft. All students start the morning at Schoolcraft and then either stay there for the morning classes or they hop on their shuttle and go out to one of our community partners.
Okay.
So absolutely,
Okay,
thank you.
That was one and the same then. Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Frank?
I love that program, and I'm so thankful that we're really looking to expand it and add more companies to it. It's an exciting program to service our kids with. And I am also grateful, actually, that our numbers are going down for the cooperative agreement for the Career Technical Center, because that means our students are taking advantage of it. So we have less cooperative agreements because we have more Livonia Public School students that are taking advantage of the classes. So I think it's actually good news that we're not having as many kids coming from out of district, because I think, if I hear so much, kids don't know what the opportunities are, and the fact that we are and that we're filling it up, I think is a great opportunity for our Livonia Public School kids.
No, I appreciate that, and it's wonderful just to highlight our staff at the Career Center, and Mrs. Gray, who's in her second year, who's taken the course requests of our 3 high schools and the juniors and seniors from 900 to over 1,100 in just 2 years. As well as Ms. Pacey, who's our career intern program instructor, and she's really advanced that program as well in her first year, as well as the skilled trades intern program, which is starting to grow. In fact, she presented at Rotary this afternoon for that too. So wonderful things happening over there.
So yes, Mrs. Burton.
Almost forgot, I have one other question for each one of you. For the Livonia Transition Program, the $8,000 additional that's transferred over in addition to the FTE for that student, how is that dollar figure decided upon? Was that the amount that we get from the state for our special education students?
So in addition to the foundation allowance that we receive for our students, we've determined that because our classes are small, our paraprofessional numbers are higher, that it does cost additional funds to provide that educational environment, not to mention the rent on the space and the other incidentals, including transportation. So Ms. Smith, who is our financial wizard, has looked at what it takes to support students in that setting and has helped us determine that amount.
Okay. And it's still a win for our sending districts because it is far less expensive for them to take advantage of our program that's already in existence than for them to try to recreate this on their own. So it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
And also, Mr. Etu, looking at the list of the schools that are on the cooperative agreements for Career Tech Center, I noticed Plymouth Christian Academy is on that list, and I was wondering how that came to be, seeing as it's a private institution.
We do have private institutions that reach out from time to time when they have student needs of their own that they can't fulfill, and that's been a partnership with them for a few years now.
Okay, I thought this is not the first time on the list, but I couldn't remember why we wound up doing that, because it's not common.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
okay, so that was a reach out on their part to try
Correct.
to get involved in our program.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Welcome.
Again, a testament to the great work that's being done with both programs, that we have these high numbers of students being engaged in both programs, and our community partnerships continue to increase. So thank you.
Absolutely. And we request that this be on the consent agenda for the regular board meeting next week.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 4B, purchase of Amplify Science. And we have Mrs. O'Brien presenting for us. Yes, Mrs. Frank.
Sorry, can I just go back? Just a question for the board. Just wondering, we talked about it tonight, so is that sufficient? Or do we want to give the opportunity for LCT to highlight our because if it's on consent agenda, right, we just do it? Do we want to give the opportunity for them to talk a little bit about the transition program or in the LCTC or not? Has it always been on consent agenda?
The past few years it has been, yes.
Okay. I don't know.
I'm
We
sorry.
talked about it tonight.
I'm fine with I'm fine with, I think you make a good point, that the community should know about this and how soon we all forget. I mean,
know,
we
I
forget
know.
details of it and we live it every day. So yeah, I'm fine with that. And frankly, if even one board member wants it pulled off consent agenda, that's all it takes to pull it off consent agenda and put it on. But I think that's a very valid reason.
I want a dialogue to see if you all thought that. I'm not strong, I don't feel strongly, but I
No,
just thought.
it's not.
No, sure,
I
that's
think it's a
fine.
great idea.
Yeah, that's
All right, let's
a lot
put
of
it on the
positive stuff
regular
to
agenda.
to put out there, so.
All right,
Sorry.
regular agenda.
And they thought they were gonna go home early.
I know. I just think it's really. That was not, that was like.
That would be a really special day.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Programs are really.
Great point. Mrs. O'Brien, go ahead with Amplify Science.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Acosta. I am bringing a recommendation to extend our digital licenses for our science program that we purchased 6 years ago. That went very fast. Amplify is our science curriculum for 6th, 7th, and 8th. It is also for 5th grade, but we purchased their licenses a year later. So we first adopted it for the middle schools, and 6th grade is considered middle school in most districts. So when we did our science adoption, it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers. This program has online simulations that students utilize through their site, and then it also provides online activities. In addition, we also create a small journal that goes with each unit of Amplify. At the study session, you asked what other materials are out there. So we utilize EdReports. So EdReports is a nonpartisan group that evaluates curriculum resources for their alignment to the Common Core state standards. So over the last 4 or 5 years, we've started with those programs that are all green. All green is kind of in quotes, on EdReports. So they have the strongest alignment to our state standards. So currently there are 3 other programs that are all green in EdReports. And Mrs. Caldwell took the time to review what their curriculum is. and they are very similar to Amplify. So they follow storylines, which you may recall that when we were looking at biology materials before we purchased the pre-AP biology, we were using OpenScience, so it was a free resource, but that had biology storylines. So it builds a concept around a big idea. So these programs for middle school science also have the same idea, and some have the same exact units. So it would really be shifting for teachers to learn a new platform, but about the same type of an experience for a student. And so that's why when she surveyed teachers, they did not want to change programs because they felt they've been using Amplify, they're comfortable, their students are, and there wasn't anything vastly different out on the market. So that is one of the reasons why we are recommending to renew our license for the next 6 years. So typically, 6 years is a long extension. Amplify is an expensive program, and we saved money by getting 6 years worth of the extension. And then we worked with the company to make sure their first quote was based on the number of students we had at middle school 6 years ago, which, as we know, our numbers have gone down. So our quote is for 6 years for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, for a total of $251,980.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. I have one question and then one observation. What's the difference in your memo? It says teacher licenses, and then it says integrated model licenses.
Those are the simulations, so that's a student license. So teacher access to the teacher resources through Amplify, that's a separate package, and then the student licenses.
Okay, that makes sense to me. The other thing I just wanted to highlight, this is another item that we're able to purchase, as you indicate, through the Wayne County Enhancement Knowledge that has really helped us to purchase some of these items for our students.
Yes, so all of our resources, all of my textbook budgets have been supported by the Wayne County Enhancement Millage money so that we have money to provide our students with the most up-to-date resources.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments? Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
And yes, and that concludes the curriculum committee report.
Thank you, Mrs. Acosta. We're going to move on to item 5, Building and Site Committee. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Burton.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First item on our agenda this evening is item 5A, the quarterly dashboard. We'll hear from Brian Weber and Colin, I forget your last name.
Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. We do have a number of items under building and site this evening, and so I will be collaborating with these gentlemen from Plant Moran Real Point, our partners as owner's rep, in Mr. Francis's stead this evening, and we are going to start with the quarterly dashboard. And so I believe, Mr. Weber, you're going to start us through that. There are some points of emphasis we would like to make to you this evening as we go through it, but as always, please feel free to ask any questions, and then know that beginning tomorrow, this quarterly dashboard will be placed on the website as we do each time we go through this with the board, so that the community has access to all of them back from the start of our 2013 bond.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for having us again this evening. Proud to be here and great partners and continue that. So with that said, we'll go with our quarterly dashboard. I will run through each section here and please stop as necessary if anything catches your eye, you need to talk through anything further. Top left portion of the dashboard, our bond program goals and objectives. These have remained stagnant since day one of the program, just so everybody's aware of the goals of the program and what we align to as we continue each bid package. Moving into the cost summary, the larger table to the right-hand side, just talking through each one of the categories, each column to understand what they are. There's a lot of data there. We won't be talking through every number, but we'll highlight a couple of the key points. So our current budget obviously will tally up to what is $190 million, 190, 12,221. So our original bond program was $186 million. You'll see in the footnotes that we are accounting for a little over $4 million in earned interest. The funds that were received sitting in the bank account, they accrued interest over the life of them sitting there. We are actually understanding that given the markets, there's actually additional funds that were accrued at that time, but there is a level that some of it has to go back. You cannot gain essentially a profit on it, so it's called arbitrage. So we've been working with Ms. Smith's department, with PFM, the financial advisor for the district, to make sure that we're not accounting for those funds that may have to be returned to the federal government. So the $4 million is a conservative number, and we can account for all that as construction funds to use. So that counts up to the $190 million. Column B is the current contracts.
Excuse me, Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Can you rewind that just a second?
Yeah.
What federal funds may,
It
okay,
is a point, there's a threshold that we work with the financial advisors, that you can accrue interest on the funds. However, if the market is exceeding what the fees are paid to the bond payers or the bond investors, you can't exceed that threshold. So
Okay.
may have not gone down a rabbit hole I didn't intend to, but we
No,
are
that's
working with the financial advisors to make sure that if anybody is aware of an arbitrage scenario, we are accounting for that arbitrage scenario, and we're not putting ourselves at risk of having to take any of the $4 million back.
Yep.
And
We're
not using
certain
the
on
program.
this amount.
Yep.
If there's anything beyond that, we want to be conservative and keep it at just over the $4 million to go with our 186, which was
Yep.
passed in 2021. And so we know when it reaches a certain threshold, we are no longer able to profit off of that, so to speak.
Yep.
So we watch that closely along with our financial advisors, but we are confident with the $4 million of interest we've accrued thus far.
okay, thank you. Mrs. Frank?
So basically, there's basically a cap on interest?
There is a cap on interest,
Basically,
yes.
is what-
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a tax-free investment, so therefore, that's the trigger that does it, is you can't accrue unlimited amount of interest, so.
Okay.
Sorry for getting in a very detailed
It's
topic.
helpful to
but
know. I mean,
That's
I think
okay.
it's really
it
helpful.
is a conversation we've been tracking in all districts because of the market is different than it was 5 years ago. And yes, it is great news. It's great news that we are capping out at what it is. In years past, we were nowhere near it, so it's a lot more funds available that we can utilize.
Okay, excellent.
Yep.
Alrighty, sorry for the interruption.
No, and
Carry
I
on.
apologize for any confusion there. Current contracts and purchase orders, so these are accounting for anything that's signed, executed, agreements with any vendors. Column C is the actuals paid. Those are the dollars paid against those column B contracts and purchase orders. Column D is just math of what remains on those contracts that has not been paid out yet, so partially in progress. Forecasted contracts and purchase orders are anything that is still forthcoming for the 25-26 seasons. We want to make sure that those are accounted for and not left as a contingency or part of the unallocated reserve, or over or under for columns F and G. So F is unallocated reserve, is what we essentially consider a contingency. Throughout the bond program, if you remember way back to the times of good old COVID and cost escalations, we've had quite a few hurdles here to understand that the cost of construction has gone up. So we have dwindled down that unallocated reserve and currently leaning on other funding as needed, as noted in the footnote. But right now, we're treating everything and being very mindful of any dollar that's being spent to understand that we do have 25 and 26 to get through and understand the budget is tight, and we want to be cognizant of that. And then column G, the last one, is the forecasted over-under. This is just proving out that we're right on budget. Everything's accounted for, no dollars over, no dollars under of plus or minus on the budget.
Okay.
One item, so E, contingency, column E, $951,000. I will put a placeholder there. That will be part of the conversation for a future line item in the agenda with Churchill High School. And then all that finance information rolls down to the cash flow finances, the table below. This is just a health report on the bank account. All the way at the bottom, you'll see $8.299 million. That's essentially how many funds are still left in the bank account for Series 2. So we can use that to pay out any bills that are currently pending. And with that said, we do have our final series of Series 3. The spring, we're thinking early May, depending on the market, with the ups and downs of the market right now. Once again, working with PFM to understand when that should be sold, but the intent is to sell it this spring for the final series of bond sale.
Yeah, we are planning for hopefully the first week in May or so. But as Mr. Weber said, we've seen some volatility in the market. We want to make sure that we have folks interested in that third series, and so we certainly won't go forward unless it is a favorable time to do so. But that is our target date, and we look to gain the final $38 million when we sell Series 3.
Comments or questions at this point? Mrs. Wa-
Just
okay.
at this point,
Yep.
because
Yep.
we're going to head over to critical items.
Yep.
Okay, great.
And staying on that theme for critical items, our first one is continue to monitor the ongoing construction, cost escalation, and supply chain issues. So obviously, everybody's well aware that we are seeing some uncertain prices now with the day-to-day basis of where tariffs are at, where they're not at, if they're in play or not. So we've been monitoring that closely. We have an internal task force at Plant Plan and Real Point. We've also partnered up with some national construction management firms, not only in the larger firms in Michigan, but we have some nationwide firms that we're keeping in contact with just to keep a pulse on the market and understand the data we're seeing, if that's current, and how they're reacting to it as well. So that's something that we gather in and relay out to clients and adjust as needed. So from a tariff standpoint, though, we still have construction contingencies we can utilize as necessary. However, we do have the viewpoint of if something is coming to play, we're not going out and broadcasting it. It's a contractor, it's their burden to come to us, explain to us if they have been impacted by a tariff, if it's something they didn't have a chance to react to when pricing came out, and then we treat it as a case-by-case scenario. So far, knock on wood, we have not any major issues, but we are obviously monitoring it for this bid pack and future bid packages. So
Okay.
it's definitely a topic of conversation on a daily basis at our office.
No kidding.
And that's one of the things I really did appreciate in our last bond meeting when we talked about that. It was clear that this is on your radar as Plant Moran Real Point. You're not just simply taking it from contractors and accepting it as is, but rather saying, show us where those costs have impacted you and then how they're impacting our clients. So I appreciate the diligence with which PMR is taking it. I know that was a question that came up. You may have asked it, Mr. McFarland, during our study session, and the impact tariffs may or may not have. And so I do appreciate the due diligence that's happening through PMR on our behalf to be certain that if there is any cost escalation, that's clearly laid out and certified by our team.
Do you want to go on to the next section?
Yep, I didn't know
Okay.
if there's any. So,
Any other questions for this? Okay.
yeah, I still have a couple more I just
Nope,
want to touch
go
base
ahead.
on. So resolve any remaining classroom air conditioning issues. As everybody's well aware that we've had our challenges. Workers have been in site the past few weeks in the classrooms affected. It came to a total of about 28 classrooms that had major work that was necessary. So they started during spring break, have been working off shift. They're working this weekend as well to relocate some of the components needed to fix the issue. There's about a handful left, tracking that by the end of the month, we're looking to be in good shape where everything's moved and corrected as necessary. There's a process that's temperature sensitive to recharge the units with the refrigerants and all that. So we will track weather. It's all dependent on that to get them started up and ready for the cooling season. But everything is tracking well right now. That the plan that was laid out is going to plan right now. And then-
Mrs.
sorry.
Frank?
28 classrooms sounds like a lot, but can you remind us how many you guys did off the top of
We
your
were,
head,
we
approximately?
were touching, I think, 700 plus classrooms.
Okay.
And then larger systems were, and those are individual classrooms, some of them were bigger units that
Right,
touch
right.
multiple, so it could get up to close to 1,000 if you touch all the rooms in the district.
Thanks.
Yep. So yes, it has not been as smooth as we would like, and we understand that, and although it is a small amount, we've taken it very seriously to make sure that those classrooms impacted are resolved quickly.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Mr. Weber, you said one thing that it's temperature sensitive
Yep.
to get the system charged.
Yep.
I'm assuming that means the temperature has to be higher
Yes.
enough. Once it's charged, if the temperature goes below that, as Michigan is prone to do up and down,
Yeah.
does that cause any problems?
No, it does not, and not to get in the full weeds of it, but it's the initial startup process where mechanical systems are flowing. They're checking pressures and temperatures during that initial few hours of startup of the system. Once it's up to temperature and pressure, it sits there like any other air conditioning
Okay.
unit of your house. It's a standard procedure for these types of systems, so
Okay.
yep,
All right,
it's
great,
just the
thank you.
initial startup.
Thanks.
Along that line, is that going to be an initial startup each spring?
No, it is not.
Okay.
That's a great question. It is not. It's just an initial to fill the system with the necessary components, and then it's charged, it stays there, and then it's just the normal cycle of, like I said, what you would have in your house. It's a similar system.
Okay.
Yep.
So just for folks knowing what to expect, the very first day that we hit some warm temperatures, your AC may or may not in your classroom be fully functional. That's because it's going through its whole startup process.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, it's as fast as we can get the crews out there. If we get a quick spike in temperatures from the 50s to the 80s, that's something that they wouldn't be able to react to all 28. But hopefully we're looking to get somewhere in the 60s or 60 and rising,
Okay.
Which is good because it's not a full cooling weather where it'll still draw in outside air to cool the rooms down, but they can get in there and work on the mechanical
Okay,
air conditioning component of it.
okay.
Yep.
Sounds good. Thank you.
On the last 3 bullet points, just touch high level is we want to make sure we have a good construction season. It's off to a great start. We've taken over the libraries in all 4 schools, which would be Grant, Buchanan, Johnson, and Churchill. So we have occupied, the construction teams have occupied those. Demolition is underway. In fact, they're making great progress. So great start so far. And then we will move on next to kitchens. We're going to take some of the kitchens down in early May, working with Ms. Schuhart and the food service department. They're larger renovations that can't get done in the end blocks of the bookends of a summer. So we work with her department and understand, is it easier to take it down in the spring, be done by the end of summer, or some of them we start in the summer and carry into the fall. So all that's been coordinated with building staff and supervisors. So kitchens will be next, and then we'll get the full takeover in the summer, but we're trying to get a head start and good progress so far.
Yeah, I'll just make a note, a huge thank you to our teams out in the schools for getting those media centers packed up and ready to be renovated. Mr. Weber sent us some photos, as did members of our cabinet at the end of last week, and you would be shocked at the work that they've already done in there to clear out those areas and to begin that work. And it's a lot of work to get ready to do that when you're in the middle of the school year. So both there and in the kitchen, we appreciate our teams in the schools getting that ready to go.
Second to last bullet is maintain the design schedule for the 2026 renovations. We're looking to hit our regular cadence, and we are on pace. We're in the first phase of schematic design is set to be issued in May, with the intent of getting through the next design iterations and out to bid in the fall as we've done in previous years, and everything's pointing in a good direction right now, that we're in good shape. And then the last bullet we had already touched on is the sale, that final series 3 for the bond sale, to get the remaining dollars for the program accounted for.
Any questions or comments at this point? No.
Okay.
Alrighty. I think we're all set. Thank you both so very much.
Yep. Well, you're not rid of us yet.
Oh, I thought, okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we've got a list tonight. Thanks for this one. Alrighty. The next item on our agenda is 5B, approval of funds for Churchill LMC renovation.
So I'll kick that off, and then we'll all spend a little bit of time talking about this. So we talked about this last week at our study session. We shared with you that when we first went through the renovations of the media centers in the 90s, Churchill was not one of those renovated. So you may recall that that's when we did our big renovations at Stevenson and Franklin and took them out of the center of the school and built them on the side of the school and added essentially what were brand new media centers. We did that at most of our schools at that time. There were a few schools where we had especially the internal media centers, Riley, Cooper, Churchill was one of them, where they did not go through that extensive renovation at that time. So other than getting the computer labs, they did not go through the full renovation that these other schools did. And as you know, we went through the process as we normally do with the design teams at the school, our bond team here, our designers, our architects, and we shared with you a few months back the initial development design for Churchill High School LMC. As we took a look at that and as we reflected on the fact that these are really once-in-a-generation renovations. So these are renovations we might do every 20 or 25 years in our schools. It's not something that we would take on this type of renovation every 5 years or so. And so we want to make sure we get it right. We also want to make sure that we have comparable facilities for our students at every school. And so we did go back to the drawing board a bit, and what we really wanted to do was take a look at partially some aesthetic changes to the plans that really led to also some functional changes that involve some pretty significant HVAC modernization that is needed there as well. So it was a happy marriage of both of those things that we were able to do. And so what we're bringing to you this evening, as Mr. Weber shared in his letter, we really took a look at some alternative options for this space. and what we were able to do with it. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what those are, what we're planning on doing there, and then we'll go through the cost. But the good news is, when we refer back to the dashboard, you will note that we do have the dollars set aside to be able to make these changes, but we do want to bring that for your approval.
Yeah, just to get a little bit into the scope of the work, the existing air handler, mechanical systems, and the distribution overhead, it was one of the factors that was limiting taking the space to the full use. So we had looked at it a few times. We brought the engineering and architectural team back in. We actually brought trades in. This is after they had been awarded, but did some investigation over the Christmas holiday to understand what our potential options are. So we weren't leaving anything on the table as far as what potential was there, or what restrictions were behind the ceilings. We literally cut access panels in the ceilings and the walls. The teams went in as a group and looked at everything that was behind wall. From there, design team came back, presented quite a few good options of A, B, C, and I think there was a D in there as well. Presented that to the administrative team, and we understood that there were major impacts and we would have to adapt, but also that it was necessary to make it to the standard of the other facilities that we were renovating between the Franklins and the Stevenson. So going through those iterations, design drawings were reissued for pricing from contractors. Once again, sat with Clark Construction and all those contractors to vet out pricing, understand if there were options for simplifying or being cost effective to make sure we were being diligent along the way, just not throwing bad money at good, and understanding if it's efficient and modernizing spaces. The big thing is the infrastructure for the HVAC. It was one larger system that fed a lot of ancillary spaces that surrounded that LMC. Not only are we rerouting the ductwork for it, but we're also giving individual units some of those spaces that didn't have it before. So it'll give it more control and improvement on the controls and in temperature control with those ancillary spaces that wasn't there before, which was another win-win of the space.
It really is. As you may recall, it feeds into the counseling area. There's also some classroom area. One of the areas is being turned into the first dedicated esports room, which I know Churchill is very excited about. So in combination, we really felt like this design, in working with Mrs. Casada at Churchill, as well as Mr. Calmback, working with Nick, our wonderful media specialist there, and our team, we really appreciate French and Associates being willing to really go back to the drawing board, so to speak, and to really elevate some of the design elements as well as the functionality for students. And the fact that we get to make some of these modernizations to the HVAC systems will be a huge plus for us now and in the future.
Okay.
So when we want to take a look at the dollars related to that?
Yep, so with that said, the total request recommendation was $950,000. There is a breakout of each of the contractors to get to those dollar amounts. Within that number, we also put some dedicated allowances within there. There are unknowns. There's continuing demolition going on, so we wanted to make sure that we accounted for any unforeseen items or options for that. So we are going to manage those. If they're unused, as with anything else, they'll be returned back to the owner contingency. But there were unknowns that we want to make sure the contractor wasn't assuming, and they keep control of it. So we identified that. We'll work with them in the field, and if something's identified, we know we have those dollars set aside to have that cushion we need if there's an unforeseen in the process.
And so we would recommend utilizing the contingency that you find in column E on your dashboard. So we have a $951,000 contingency from prior projects. So we would recommend utilizing that for the purpose of completing this project. And so we would not be coming back for new dollars to the board. We would simply be asking to utilize that contingency, and we would like to bring that to the next regular meeting for your approval.
And just to clarify, those were returned, but it is, I want to make sure those are repurposed to, the 950 would be to Churchill. So previous years, it was a mixture of it wasn't one lump sum, but multiple figures returned back to the owner contingency, and then this approval to use that 950 at Churchill.
Okay. Are there comments or questions on this item?
Anything from our last discussion you want us to hit on? Okay.
No? You're all set? Okay. I think we're all set.
Okay, great.
And the next item is item 5C, the Stevenson Pool Filtration Replacement.
Yes, we are on to pool filtration, and excited to talk about this one. No, in all honesty, we are looking to replace, and I'll ask Colin to be going into more detail on this, but this is a system that was first put in 2010. So we are really reaching end of life. Not only are we reaching end of life, but we are also to the point where replacement parts are not available. Our team has done truly what they can in bringing in folks to assist them with working on this, but we are very, very at a precarious point that we need to get this filtration system replaced. Otherwise, we could potentially see our pool use at Stevenson go down for the count for quite some time. And we certainly don't want that to happen. And so we'd like to go over with you the work that will be done, the cost that it will have, and the pricing that we have gotten, and talk to you a little bit about the bids that came in or did not come in. And then also let you know that we will be looking to do something very similar at Churchill and Franklin next year. Helen?
Yep, absolutely. So the scope of this work is replacing the filter system. We're also replacing some of the lighting in the filter room. And then while the pool is drained, we are going to take advantage of that and do any grout repairs in that pool system. So this was a publicly bid process through the usual process. Published in a local newspaper and posted on the required state of Michigan website, as well as the Livonia Public Schools website. We did only receive one bid for this proposal. We had contact with 3 total bidders during the bid period, and due to schedule and their manpower being scheduled for the summer, they were unable to bid for this project. After a post-bid interview was conducted, discussing the scope of work, schedule, manpower requirements, the team is recommending Barzini Contracting as the lowest responsible bidder. They have worked in the district recently, and then the total recommendation amount is $466,200 with a hard construction amount of $423,781 and construction contingency of $42,419. This will be, the cost for the work will be in a standard AIA contract pending final review by the district's legal counsel.
And so this funding would be coming from our sinking fund. And we would be, we have worked with Barzini before. In fact, I believe they worked at Stevenson, correct?
Yes.
To do the pool renovation there.
And I could provide some clarity from the bond side of it. So there was work done in the pool room proper at Stevenson. This was a completely different isolated room. It's in the back of house, all the, literally the filtration system for the pool. So the work that Barzini had completed for the bond were the new starting blocks, the new diving boards, and all the equipment in the pool room proper. This is a completely isolated back of house filtration system that's getting replaced on this project.
Okay. Comments or questions? Mr. McFarland?
So the same company and the bid is covered to do the grout work as well as the filtration? That's all accounted for in here?
Yes.
That is correct. Yeah, as Colin had mentioned, it's just an efficiency there. The pool has to get drained regardless, so that they want to take advantage. And it makes complete sense that while the pool's drained out, let's take care of all the other maintenance stuff there so we don't have to take it offline at a later date, so.
Mrs. Bradford?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Maybe you already said this. When was the last time we repaired the school pool filtration?
2010.
Okay, and is that life expectancy from 2010, what was that, 15 years?
It is,
That's
yes.
about
Yeah.
the length that we get out of that.
It is, and we have stretched it.
Okay.
Speaking,
Okay.
yeah, Mr. Roberts in the maintenance department said that it is very hard to find replacement parts for the system right now.
Okay.
The concern is that the next time it goes down, if he can't get parts, this pool is down for a long time. So
Okay.
it's putting him in a bad spot, so.
Perfect. I
that's
just
why-
didn't know how long those systems last,
Yeah,
so we're
we've
way
really
past.
gotten everything out of it. that
Okay,
was good.
perfect. Thank you.
And thank you too, Brian, for bringing up what was done in 2020, because I was
Yep.
trying to remember what had been done and
Yep.
couldn't. That was my one question for tonight on this one. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Colin, when would we start this process?
This would be late May, early June, and they anticipate about 4 to 6 weeks project.
To finish it?
Yep.
Okay. And I think Mrs. Oquist mentioned that we're thinking Franklin and Churchill next year?
Next year, both of those.
Both at
And
the same
we believe
time?
it will not be quite as extensive.
Yeah,
as
it's
extensive.
a simpler system. The Stevenson pool has 2 separate pools because of the dive pool. So I don't know if it's necessarily a smaller system, but it's slightly different.
Okay, and about the same time to do those as well?
Yeah, I would have to,
complete 'em?
I would have to talk with the contractors on some details on that, but I would imagine they're about the same time.
Okay. Was there any surprise that we only had one bidder for this?
A little bit. We had talked with, as I said, 3 different bidders who had verbally committed to bidding, and then as they reviewed the schedule and their manpower, I think some other bids came up that they were awarded, and they were unable to fulfill the schedule that we needed to accomplish.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Mrs. Frank?
Swim season, will the swimmers, will they go to Churchill Franklin,
We,
or is it not?
it's in between season, however, there's always activities going on in high schools, as you well know. When we took down the other schools for the bonds, we coordinated between the schools, talking to the athletic directors, gym teachers, so we've been in contact with them, and we'll plan accordingly. If there's any one-off events that they need to shift, that it's being coordinated between the schools.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this item? Nope. All righty. Next item is 5D, the sinking fund update.
Okay, so we're excited to bring this to the board this evening, and what we really wanted to do was spend some time this evening. Our bond team has been talking about this for quite some time. As you know, we value and really live off of our 10-year facility plan. As a district, we believe that having a detailed long-term plan sets our path. It allows us to have a systematic approach to the updates and the improvements that we need for our facilities. We run a large organization, and we know that in order to keep up those 3 million plus square feet, we really need to have a plan to do that properly. The last time we went out to the community for the renewal of the sinking fund, one significant change was made in that we went for a 10-year ask. And so we are in the process of fulfilling that at this time. We felt it was a good and appropriate match for our 10-year facility plan. What that has allowed us to do is to do some really detailed long-term planning, and we really have a constant 3-year plan always moving ahead. And what we wanted to do was just pause for a moment, and Colin is going to take us through the blue area, just really highlighting some of the things, some of the projects that we've done. It really is a wow when you think about what we've been able to complete during that time. And then we'd like to take you through our proposals for the next 3 years, because what you will see when we are done is that we really are at a point where we have planned for the expenditure of the dollars coming in. And so if the board said, for instance, that there was a wish to go in a different direction on one of these, we really would have to rethink our plans and transfer something out. So we are not looking at holding on to millions of dollars each year. We are looking to utilize the dollars we bring in, utilize them to address the needs of our facilities so that, one, we can avoid cost escalation, because the longer we wait to do things, the more expensive it is. We also know that if we continue to keep our facilities in outstanding shape, that serves our students and our staff well. So Colin, would you take us through really what we've done over the past 8 years or so, and then where we're looking to go the next 3 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So the top section, the blue section, you can see the number of projects that we've done since 2016. I wanted to highlight a couple of them. With the roofing projects, we did have that district-wide roofing assessment done. We use that to inform the condition of all our roofs, and we use that when we look at our 3-year plan. Same thing with the paving projects. We had a district-wide parking lot assessment done. Again, we look at that every time we look at this 3-year plan. The boiler projects, all the facilities have been upgraded. So we have no future projects on that, as you can see. You can see some of the athletics projects. I'll highlight a couple of those when I talk through what we did in 2024. And then the other facility improvement projects, some of the miscellaneous projects that have been needed throughout the district. Some highlights in 2024, we were able to do the paving at Central Office Phase 1. We're looking at potentially a 4 to 5 phase paving project here throughout the years. Roofing, we completed a partial replacement at Franklin High School and a full replacement at Cleveland. And then the Stevenson High School field should be finishing at the end of May. And then in total for the projects in 2024, we were able to return about $750,000 in contingency and allowances, just for managing the projects and making sure that they were spent appropriately. So then moving on to 2025, so what we have planned this year, we have the Churchill High School roof partial replacement. That's probably a 2 or 3 phase project just because of the size of that roof. We have the central office roof full replacement, the Webster Elementary full replacement, and then the warehouse partial replacement. The other part of the warehouse was replaced in 2018 and is still in really good shape. Paving projects, we are looking at central office phase 2. And then moving on to athletics projects, we have the Stevenson pool filtration system that we just talked about, and then the Stevenson tennis court resurfacing. And then in the other facility improvements, we have the Career Technical Center woodshop exhaust, and the high schools and Career Tech Center wood and auto shop air conditioning projects. Those are some specialty systems, so that's why they were isolated from the bond work. They are separately designed and just different systems. Any questions on 25? Okay. So moving on to 2026, roofing projects we're looking at are Buchanan Elementary, Cooper Upper Elementary, Franklin High School Gym, and Stevenson High School Gym. The gyms over the last year had gotten a lot of service calls. We want to look to replace that as soon as possible so that we can protect those floors. And then looking at paving projects, we have Central Office Phase 3 and then Rosedale Elementary. As I said, we use that report by NTH to inform which schools we want to look at next. We also kind of do some drive arounds and check make sure everything else is in good condition and talk with the facilities department to see if there's any other issues that have popped up since that report has been done. Athletics projects, as we just talked about, we're looking at doing the Churchill and Franklin pool filtration systems, and then the Franklin tennis court resurfacing as well. Other facility improvements, we are looking at the central office generator. We've done some preliminary budgeting in preparation for that project. We have met with the city on the Coolidge water main to start planning that project. That's a water main that has caused school closures in the past, so they want to address and fix that up. Then we're looking at the Marshall raising. That project would start once the current tenant has moved out. And then the monument signs, which are the signs on the main road for all of the schools, not all the schools, excuse me. We're looking at the high school, Career Technical Center, and central office for those. Any questions on 26?
Just one minute. It's probably the gym, but the gym or the field house for the roofing projects at the 2 high schools?
It's the competition gyms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And just to clarify, to latch onto that, the gym at Churchill actually falls underneath this year's program, so that's why it is, if anybody's wondering why not Churchill, it is getting covered in this replacement this year.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. I'm curious how the monument signage differs from what we currently have?
So we're really still taking a look at that. We know that some of our signs are 20 to 25 years old at the high schools, and some of their functionality is fading. What we're looking to do is have a more uniform type of sign that can be modernized a bit. We're going to keep it within cost. You can really go anywhere from putting letters back into the slots all the way to video boards. So we will be somewhere in between, although we did see some pretty neat signage. What we would be looking to do is to update and modernize those signs so that they're a good piece of information for the community, not just who attend those schools, but we know we get a lot of traffic in front of each of those high schools as well as the Career Center, and so we'll be doing similar signage at each of those, and we're really not yet fully in the design stage, but we've certainly seen some that we would like to emulate, and then also to update the sign outside of central office. So the elementary schools, many of those were done during the bond. So when the front arches were put in, the pavers and the benches, we also did the signs of many of the schools. And really they're getting a bit long in the tooth, the monument signs at the high schools. And again, we're having some functionality issues. So we do not yet have designs. That's why we right now have it slated for 26. We had initially hoped to be able to get that into 2025, but we believe we will be at capped on the work we're able to do for 25 with the projects we have listed. So we're going to take a little bit more time, but we'll be excited to bring you some drawings as we get closer.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mrs. Bradford?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. The water mains at Coolidge and Cleveland, those are all our district responsibility, or does the city have any culpability in water?
It is a mixed bag throughout the district. Some are publicly owned, some are privately owned, which the district owns it. Those two in case are private-owned lines. However, there's unique ones with these buildings going in the 50s. There's some unique scenarios that Mr. Roberts, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Lau, Colin had sat in with the city a couple weeks ago, and we're going to start those conversations to understand a case by case of how to address each one, knowing
So
that they
each
are
building is
aged.
different, so it just so happens at Coolidge and Cleveland, it would be our responsibility, or we're just not sure yet how?
We're not sure yet. It is a
Okay.
partnership that we've
Okay.
actually converted some from private to public, where LCTC and ECC both got converted from a private to a public water main. It's just a
Okay.
matter of adding an easement around the property. But it turns into be a win-win scenario that Mr. Roberts and Mr. Lau have been happy with, and it's a good partnership. Easier to maintain with the city, and
For sure.
and they're great to work with. So we'll treat each one case by case and make sure that they're handled properly.
Okay, thank
And
you.
you might remember Coolidge in particular had, I believe, 3 days of shutdown last year because of water main. So we are all anxious to get that one
Oh, for
completed.
sure, yep, thanks.
Other comments at this point? I have one question. Churchill High School, the roof that's being partially done, and is that because, am I remembering correctly that that's because only part of it is in that level of need right now? I mean, we couldn't do the entire building all at once anyway, it's just too large for it.
You hit the nail on the head. It's both. It is, some are not yet, we have to prioritize understanding limited dollars each summer, so we have to hit the worst case ones. And then the second one is, there's just not enough time to do a full high school in one summer, so we prioritize based on condition and the size of each facility, how much they can do in one summer.
Okay, because I noticed that it's on for 25, but as a partial, but not 26, 27. Do I assume that the other portions are going to hold up long enough that we don't have to have them on for 26 or 27?
Yeah, so that's part of that roofing assessment that we look through, and we have them essentially kind of ranked as, and color-coded. I think we've shown the maps in our previous recommendations, so the areas that we aren't doing have enough life left to circle back to in a few years.
Good. And frankly, I'm glad because we don't, like anything, we don't want them all to give out then.
Right,
X number of years down the road,
Correct.
all at the same time.
You're
It'd be a nightmare.
100% right.
Yeah.
We're finding, the expense of these are so significant.
huge.
And it's taking up, we're really pleased actually that the boiler projects are done because we are needing to see those dollars utilized primarily for roofing, but also paving. As you see, the central office is being phased out into 4 different sections with the primary focus to start on the areas where the buses do the most travel. But it takes a bit of time, not only to not have the whole parking lot out of commission, but also the cost to replace the entire thing.
Okay.
You want to take a look at 27?
Okay, go ahead with
yeah.
27, yep.
Yeah, so 27, these are projects that are on our radar, we're starting to do initial planning for. Can obviously change based on service calls and needs that pop up throughout the district. So right now for roofing, we have Coolidge Elementary, the high school annex buildings, Garfield Community, and the Roosevelt Elementary. Paving, we have Central Office Phase 4, Riley Upper Elementary as a partial replacement, and then Stevenson High School as a partial replacement as well. To be determined in the athletics projects, and then the other facility improvements, we have the Cleveland water main, which was part of that meeting that we had with the city of Livonia.
I have one question. Can you give us a ballpark on, for these categories, what we can expect in terms of life expectancy? Because I just don't remember. Roofs would last, and I know we're doing chunks of roofs at a time, so it's not like the entire thing is going to go. like how long should we expect a roof to last, a boiler to last, and paving I know is not as long because those things literally take a beating on buses every day.
Yes. So roofing, a safe number is 20 to 25 years. You get a 20-year warranty with the flat membrane system. There's plenty of roofs in this district that are 30 years old at this point that are still serviceable, but obviously on the list to get there. So 20 to 25 years is a good safe number for roofing. Okay. For the paving, it's more of a 10 to 15 year. A lot of it hinges on maintenance of it. The district has done a good job in the past few summers of just filling cracks or doing maintenance of keeping the water out of is the main thing. So depending on how well they're maintained, it's a 10 to 15 year life expectancy for the parking lots. Boilers, 15 to 20 years is typical for those systems as well. Once again, it's dependent on maintenance and making sure all the chemical and the balances are right with those systems and maintaining them, being proactive on it, but that's also a good lifespan. The athletics projects, the main ones are the turf fields. Those are 10 to 15 years, knock on wood, but you really want to plan for a 10-year life cycle on the turf fields, which are the big investments for the district that we would talk about for athletics. And then the other ones are miscellaneous, like HVAC systems. You're getting 15 to 20 years out of those systems as well.
Okay.
And I think that's a good
Thank
point
you.
where we would like to, if this is all right with you, Mrs. Burton, when Mrs. Smith and I talked today about this, we thought it may be helpful. This is, the first part of this is taking a look at these projects. Are there projects that you would like us to take a second look at, or other things that we have not mentioned that you would like to have us consider? Because what we want to show you is that we are planning to utilize a good portion of the funds that we collect each year. And so we would not be in a position to add significant projects to what we have on the list. And when we first went out to the community, we really said roofing, paving, boilers. That was what we were going to focus on. And to me, when we talk about promises made, promises kept, our community can feel very certain that that is exactly what we've done. One of the things that we do each year, as you know, is we set aside $500,000. We set that aside for maintenance and operations to use for any emergencies that come up and any needs that we have. And we utilize a good portion of that amount each year on projects that are needed to be done, smaller projects, plumbing, electrical, and so on, throughout our district. And so that's what we're looking at here. And what we wanted to do was bring you a commensurate financial summary of what we have collected to date, our expenditures, and then what we have remaining. And so as you can see, we're looking at a big year ahead in 26. As we move ahead, we have some big projects planned. But Mrs. Smith, do you want to walk us through this and share some of the highlights?
Yes, absolutely. So I know this is not new to the board. This is something we see when we're looking at our budget book and of course our financial statements, but to see it all together just to show you kind of the flows, ebbs and flows of our sinking fund. I won't walk through every year unless you would like me to. Something that stands out to me as we're looking at it, maybe starting from the beginning. So the first column is, or first row, is our beginning fund balance. So where we started each school year off with as far as our fund balance and our sinking fund. And then that next group in green is the revenue that we collected that school year. In blue are the expenditures for the school year, and then in gray to end it is what we ended the school year with for our fund balance. One year that stands out to me, and of course you will all remember, is 2020-2021. So that was our first year. We had just gone out to the community and requested a sinking fund millage rate increase. So you can see that took our revenue from the prior year of about $5.2 million, and we were able to collect $7.5 million starting that year. And what you'll see, despite having rollbacks, Headley rollbacks to our sinking fund, because our property tax values have been increasing, we have been able to collect additional revenue, which we've put to good use with the projects that we've just discussed tonight. So back in 2021, we collected 7.5, and then it went to 7.7 million, almost 8.4 million, and now we're up to 9.1 million, and looking to be about 9.3 million for this school year. And then, so these 2 years, obviously we're still in the midst of 2024-25, but I am showing you here what we've spent to date as well as what's been approved, what's on the books. So those would be purchase orders and things that are pending approval. So we're looking to end this school year with about $4.7 million of fund balance, which will start for next year. Being conservative, saying that we'll collect another $9.3 million between what we collect in taxes and what we earn on interest on our sinking fund dollars. I plugged in that set aside, as Ms. Oakwa shared, about the $500,000. Those are the miscellaneous projects, a lot of which you'll see in that last column that Colin and Brian went over with us. So that leaves about $13.5 million for us to spend next year. And what was outlined for you for 2026 is about $11.5 million. So that'll leave us, we think, with about $2 million as a fund balance next year. So we're definitely using all the dollars that are coming into us. We don't want to take our fund balance down to zero because it is nice to have a little emergency fund. So if an extra water main breaks, we have funds that we can draw down on without having to go to our general fund. So again, not new information, but to show you this just year to year, how you can see the funds come in and go out.
And one of the things I think which we really want to continue to emphasize, and I certainly know this, especially when we're at statewide meetings or even countywide meetings, the community support that we've received through our 2 bonds, through our sinking fund, allow us, and then some of the savings we've been able to have, and we'll talk about the Q fund or the capital projects fund in just a moment. It really allows us to preserve the general fund for the day-to-day operations. So while we have been able to utilize some of those dollars to supplement some capital projects, imagine if we didn't have these dollars. These funds and these projects would need to be done, right? We would need to have new boilers, we would need to replace roofs. And the fact that we've continued to have the community support, I will tell you, is something as superintendent I will never take for granted, and I know you don't either as a board, but I don't think we can say it enough, because the impact this would have on our general fund would be significant. And the reason that our facilities are in the shape that they're in is because really by the end of next year, over an 11-year period, we will have invested over $475 million in our facilities across this district. And so part of that certainly is being good fiduciary stewards, but the lion's share has come from the funds that we collect through the sinking fund and through the bond.
Mrs. Jarvis.
For the benefit of our community, would you explain why it's important to have a sinking fund and the type of projects that it may cover?
Sure. So really a sinking fund deals with things differently than a bond. You have actually a little bit more latitude in the bond depending on the way you write it. But with regard to the sinking fund, it really is for those essential repairs that a school district needs to do, similarly to what we need to do on our house. And so there are certain things, again, replacing roofs, HVAC systems, boilers, paving projects are all things that are allowable within the sinking fund. And that really allows us to say, okay, we have a dedicated amount each year that we can spend in our savings, so to speak, but it can only be utilized for those purposes. It cannot be utilized outside of those purposes. So we cannot use it toward salary. We cannot use it toward other projects of that nature, anything with regard to people, so to speak. But we can use it on the facilities and maintaining those facilities. Brian or Colin, do you want to add in any specifics with regard to the sinking fund?
Yeah, I think that hit a good lion's share portion of it. Also, technology was introduced a few years back.
Yes.
That's also,
Yes.
we do set aside some technology funds for the department for refresh of laptops or Chromebooks or miscellaneous devices. Is I think the only one, the major portion that was not touched that is also allowable.
Yeah. That's a great question, Mrs. Jarvis, because sometimes I know that, that's a question our community has. Why do we need this and why is this important? What can we use it for?
Brian, did buses also get put under the umbrella of sinking fund? I know there was talk of that, and I don't remember if that passed or not.
It did pass, but you have to go back out and ask for, you have to update your, so
Okay.
you can't, with the program that was approved prior to that, you can't inherently buy buses with it. You'd have to go back out and ask the community again and include the language to include
Right,
buses.
so buses would have to be
Yes.
listed in the language
Yes.
when they vote on it, in order
Correct.
for us to be able to use it for buses, even though
Correct.
it's legally allowable.
Great memory, though, Mrs. Burton. We pushed for that for quite some time, and it's now in there. So we can include it in the next time we go out to renew the sinking fund. We can include it in that language,
Okay.
similarly to how technology was added.
Correct.
But right now, it wasn't in when we last went out for the renewal.
Okay.
But, I'm sorry,
Mrs.
but
Bradford.
technology was included in
That's
this for
correct.
tenure. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Barron. This is more of an observation, and I look at it in terms of the importance of these types of meetings, because when you look at the columns and the categories, roofings, paving, and boiler projects, other than the paving, and people probably don't pay a whole lot of attention to the paving, and they don't see the roofing projects, and they don't see the boiler projects. They do see the athletic fields. I mean, that's, when we do that's a big thing, right, athletics? So they see that. They see the other facility improvements. I mean, specifically, the LED lights have just been a game changer.
Yep.
They're amazing. But they don't see these other more major projects. They don't see them the way they see the other things. So I think it's important that we have these conversations and let the community know what we've spent on these types of projects over the last 10 years and what we're going to be spending in the future, because they can't see it. They can't touch it, so to speak, feel it. So again, I think it's important that we have these conversations and discuss that, so they know where these funds are actually going, even though they can't see it.
It's a great point.
That's a great point.
They can't see it, but if we didn't have it, they would sure
Yes.
feel it.
They would feel
right?
it,
Yeah.
absolutely.
If we didn't have working boilers,
Right.
if we had leaky roofs, it's certainly something we
We'd
would
be
feel.
the first one to hear it.
Yeah.
And also, I'd like to piggyback on what you said, Mrs. Oquist, about being so thankful to our community for supporting, consistently supporting our
Yeah.
schools. And each time we've learned, there are three main questions. It's what do you need, why do you need it, and how much is it going to cost? And our community has been so consistently supportive. If we can answer those questions and explain what it is that we have that needed and wanted, and it absolutely benefits our students and our staff every day. And it also benefits our community, because then our community's property values stay strong, which they have for as long as I can ever remember, which has been almost my whole life now. So, but keeping a strong school district, these are some of the things, not all the things, but these are some of the important things about keeping a strong school district, and that it relates to strong property values for our community. So it is a win-win, but it absolutely needs to be thanked and appreciated every time we come upon these types of discussions.
There's no doubt, and I remember you using the phrase when we were bringing this to the community, that we're not talking about chandeliers.
Right.
We're
Yep.
talking about
Yeah.
really
Needs.
basic needs and elements, and so it really does feel good to have a strong foundation
Yeah.
and to be able to keep that up.
Yeah. Other comments or questions at this time?
So if,
Okay.
I'd like you to just take a look at this over the next week or so, a couple of weeks, as we come back to the next study session. We'll bring this back to you and say, are there other things that you're thinking about? Are there things that are not on this list? Because as Mrs. Smith shared with you and as we're sharing with you, we really are planning to expend these funds as we receive them, and certainly keeping some in reserve. But if there was another large-scale project that you'd like us to take a look at, we would want to know that so that we can make some adjustments to our current plans.
And that wraps up sinking fund for me folks
That's
too, right?
correct, yep.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, and the last building and site item, is 5E, Capital Projects Fund Update.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Burton. So again, this is really a regular update for you, but something we haven't taken a look at in this detail in some time. So the Capital Projects Fund, we sometimes refer to it as the Q Fund, is the fund that we utilize within the district. It really started with taking a look at the proceeds from the sale of property. And so for a period of time when our fund balance was in a very different place, when we had a sale of property, we were able to utilize that in the general fund, and we utilized that primarily for one-time expenditures. So I remember we sold some property, we needed new desks. And so we had those one-time funds, we used them for a one-time expenditure. That really, if there is one underscore of the Capital Projects Fund, it is one-time revenue to be utilized for one-time expenditures. And so over the years that we've built in dollars into the Q fund. We had a change in board policy that directed where the proceeds from the sale of property would go. Previously, it was if the fund balance was below 5%, I believe, and now the change we made, I believe, back in 17. The years go by, don't they? Oh, my goodness gracious. Back in 17 was that the proceeds from the sale of property would go into the Q fund if the fund balance was in the recommended MSBO range of 15 to 20% or higher. And so really what the board was saying at that time is they were directing the sale of property or other proceeds from that to go directly into the capital projects fund as opposed to the general fund. And so I'm going to ask Mrs. Smith to take us through just highlighting some of the revenue detail for you. And then what we'd also like to do is take a look at the projects we've been able to complete to date. So when you think about, again, the good fortune of our district to be able to not only have the bond, the sinking fund, but we have had some proceeds from the sale of property. We have been able to be good stewards and set aside some dollars when we have been able to in prior years, although I believe at this point we feel comfortable putting a pause on that as we've shared with the board in our last budget because we have some other priorities over the next few years. But we'd like to talk a little bit about the revenue we've collected to date and some of the projects we've completed.
So to start us off with, really starting back in the 2015-16 years where we see we've had the capital projects fund, but it was kind of largely unused, didn't have a ton of activity in there. But in 2015-16 is when we sold Washington, that property, and we also sold a cell tower at Stevenson, and that brought in $1.7 million to the district. So that's the first two revenue line items you see going into the capital projects fund. That year, though, our fund balance was 5.9%. And so those proceeds were deposited into the capital projects fund, but then we did a transfer of $1.7 million to the general fund. And you'll see that on the right side of the page then that we have that transfer to the general fund in 2015-16. So those really were a wash. But as Ms. Oakwa said, most of the revenue going into this capital projects fund is from the sale of property. One-time revenue coming in because we sold property that we wanted to use for one-time purchases. We've also had the opportunity to do some transfers from other funds, both the transfer from the general fund as well as transfer from our special education fund. And those transfers from the general fund have largely been because we've had some grant funds, some one-time revenues going into the general fund that, again, based on our conversations and our board policy, we didn't want to build ongoing expenditures based on one-time revenue. So we brought that recommendation to the board about doing some transfers to the capital projects fund. With the transfer from the special education fund, as you know, we run county-wide center programs, and our skill center operates in its own facility. While it's a county-based program, the cost of maintaining that building falls on the district. We're not getting separate funding for that. So what we had done was build up some of our fund balance in the special education fund with the premise being we may have some things that come about, a roof at Garfield or some additional needs. I know we put in air conditioning when they moved to Garfield, that we didn't want to have to draw on our general fund. We wanted to use the funds that were given to us by the county in the form of indirect costs and use those for projects. So over the last number of years, we've also done some transfers from our special ed fund to our capital projects fund. And then we've also had miscellaneous sale of assets that we now record in our capital projects fund. These would be things like when we sell our buses. Now that we've gotten on a regular rotation of bus purchases, we are able to sell our buses when they still have value to others, and so we've gotten some money that way. This could also be furniture that's no longer needed, maybe our old desks when we got new desks, and just various equipment that's no longer needed across the district. We generally put that out to auction and then are able to bring in funds that way. And as shown on here, that's brought in $675,000 over the last decade. So that's how the money comes into the capital projects fund. I'll run through specifically some of the sales that we've seen over the last 10 years. As mentioned, we sold Washington in 2015-16. Nankin Mills, the proceeds from that came in the 1920 school year. Adams came in primarily in the 2021 school year. as well as Webster and Wilson also came in 2021. We've also had the sale of Bentley further down on that page. That brought in proceeds. And then everything else has been either, some years we've done transfers in from the funds and through different sales of miscellaneous assets. So in total, since 2015-16, we've brought in about $14.6 million into our capital projects fund. And that has been wonderful because we are definitely blessed to have a sinking fund and a bond that's been approved by our community. Those funds don't take care of everything, though, and we've definitely not been able to say yes to everything. With the help of Plant Moran and Real Point, we have come up with a 10-year facility plan, and we do have to prioritize what projects we're able to tackle and what things we're going to have to wait on. So what we'll run through next is some of those projects that were not earmarked out of bond or sinking fund, so that we've been able now accomplish because we've had these one-time revenues able to address these. So starting off, we did some building improvements at Garfield. That was about $550,000 back in 17-18. That same year, we also purchased about $267,000 worth of food service equipment. I think the biggest piece out of there, I remember we put in a new food service line at Churchill. And as you recall, our food service fund wasn't in the position that it is now. With the increase in sales and with some of the additional reimbursements we're getting, we've been able to grow a healthier fund balance in the food service fund, but that hasn't been the case. And we were in the need, we had a need to purchase some equipment, and we didn't have the food service funds to purchase it out of the food service fund. Another large project that was not earmarked for our bond or sinking fund was our central office renovation. And if you were to have visited us 5 years ago, I think anybody would agree that central office did not align with what you would see anywhere else across our districts. We've got beautiful facilities for our students, but when you visited here, it was a little bit of a time warp. So we are very excited to be able to use some of the sale of property to renovate our central office. We also have done, we did a Garfield window replacement in 21-22. That was just over $100,000. We also did a renovation of our Armco building, and that building was pretty in need of some repairs, and it looks so much better now. We spent about just over $300,000 on that project. We also used some of our capital projects fund, about $300,000, to help with the LPS district-wide area network. I believe that's the Wi-Fi. I see a question. I'll pause.
Quick question. Can you just bring us up to date on the Armco building? It's on this property, correct?
It is.
And what does it house?
Just past us. It houses quite a bit. In its heyday, it was like the wood shop. A lot of our maintenance and operations crew work out of there, so when they're building things, yes.
Okay. It's like
Our
a warehouse to hold items and things, or
Really
what?
where they work out of. And,
Okay.
So it's adjacent to the warehouse.
Okay,
It is
perfect.
adjacent to the warehouse.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
And while we're on a pause for just a moment, I'm going to back up to central office renovation. I know when it came to the attention of the board was when literally a window fell out.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, it didn't fall on anyone and no one was injured, but we do a great job of stretching the life to the very end out of most things that we have the privilege of having any control over. But at that point, it was really evident that we have now squeaked every bit of life out of the existing building to the point that it's literally falling up. It was beginning to fall apart. Yes. So it's not just aesthetics in the central office building. It certainly is, and it hadn't been renovated since the 1960s. Mm-hmm. It's for those who have not had the opportunity to stop in, come on in and take a look at some of your tax dollars at work, because it brought this building up to an up-to-date facility. Yep. But it's not just aesthetics at central office. It was actually physical need.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're right. We were so reticent for so long. We wanted every classroom to be done, every school to be done, and that was the right thing.
It was, and I'm glad.
And we had never planned to include that in the bond. But when those dollars were there, again, from some sale of property and other one-time expenditures, we literally did have windows that were falling out. And the back building is over 100 years old. This front building is quite ancient as well. And it really was time to remove a great deal of asbestos and bring it up to a professional standard. This is the place where our families register their students, and we welcome in our staff to meet their needs, as well as have a really outstanding team that works out of here each day. And so we were able to bring IT out of the basement and have an area where they are able to work very effectively, have some additional professional development and meeting room space, and then again, also have just a professional and respectful place, and just really a point of pride for our district. As you've seen, we've added some branding from each of our schools, and it really is a place to serve as the hub of our district. We did not go extravagantly, but it was done very, very nicely, and we were grateful to have the Capital Projects Fund to do that.
Mrs. Oquist, can you remind us ballpark how many people work out of this facility?
We have about 75,
Yep.
80 people that work out
That's
of
a lot.
here. It
That's
is
a lot of folks that make sure that all 20, the other 22 buildings of ours have what they need to function every day.
Absolutely.
I think some of the things that come to mind too with our central office renovation was just the functionality of the building before the renovation. We're fortunate to bring a number of staff from across the district here for professional development, and we did not have the meeting space we needed. We were able to add a lot of conference spaces, and they took into consideration we've got smaller rooms for smaller groups, we've got larger rooms for larger groups. I know the fact that the elementary principals can meet all together has been wonderful. Yep. And certain things like even restrooms, I think the community would assume there's a restroom on the main floor. Prior to the renovation, there was not. If you had to use the restroom, you were going upstairs or downstairs, something that you take
There
for
really
granted.
was not a restroom on the first floor.
Yes, so happy to have been able to accomplish
That was probably the most popular part of the
Yes.
renovation,
Yes.
actually, was putting a restroom on the first floor, which sounds a bit silly, but it's true.
Yes, exactly.
Alrighty.
We've also been able to do some furniture out of our capital projects fund, and it's been nice to be able to have this resource to go to. So, we've been able to replace classroom furniture, we've been able to go back and do teacher desks, but we still find, when we go to spaces, again, because it isn't an unlimited budget of bond dollars, that we haven't been able to tackle all of the furniture in every single building. So, most recent example that comes to mind was at our career center, and you walk in, the building looks so beautiful, and then you step into a classroom and the furniture does not match the rest of the rooms, and we've had these capital project funds to be able to go in and say, yes, we can get new desks for this space, we can get new chairs for the students, so we've been able to say yes to some of those things because we've had these dollars set aside, which has been great. I also think of some of those, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but some of the miscellaneous projects that have been requested that I'm thinking like signage that we've been able to say yes to, and it just makes the spaces look wonderful. So we've been able to definitely do a lot of things through this pot of funds. One of the things that we also had earmarked out of this in 23-24 was the early childhood roof. As you know, and I know you spoke to this, we've seen cost escalation like we haven't seen in the past, and of course we have built that into our budgets, but yet we there have been things that we've either needed to scale back on or find other funding sources, and we see that on our quarterly dashboard. Have it be grant funds, have it be the food service fund. We've been able to purchase some equipment out of there. When it came to the ECC, this was our first build for quite a long time, so we talked about wanting to do things right, and okay, are there other funds that we can tap into to complete the project to the level that we want to complete it? And we were able to use our capital projects fund to identify some costs for the ECC that we did out of here. Another example, the Randolph modular walls that we installed, I know that one, I believe, came to the board. So that was for some of our ancillary staff that didn't have designated spaces, and now they have spaces where they can work. I think also spaces where they can meet with students, so we were able to do that through this fund. Another big one was the Stevenson turf, the practice field, that we were able to do. That was not part of our sinking fund or part of the bond, and we were able to do that. Stevenson is host to another additional team. Remind me, it's
lacrosse, JV, and varsity boys lacrosse and girls lacrosse.
Yep.
They take on as a united team for all three schools.
Yep. And in listening to Arnie and the magic he has to work to get all those teams and get them on the field, the practice time that they need, and also the game time, it definitely became apparent that they needed some additional room to do that, and we were fortunate that we could say yes to that because we had these funds set aside.
Could we pause there for a moment? Mr. Freak, could you give us a quick update on where we are? That has been, it's been a project that has given us a few gray hairs.
Yeah, it was delayed a little bit with some permitting issues and easements. But right now we have essentially the base of the field in place. They've poured the concrete turf anchor around almost the entire thing. They still have part of it left out for access. They've started to set all the fence posts, and then they are now working on doing that final grade. They've also done the entire drainage system into the parking lot and tied into the rest of it. Are we looking at the pictures now?
Could we?
Yeah.
Yes. So we wanted to get you a picture of the field.
So this is a rendering of the turf when it's put in, and then I think I can change it here.
Well, real quick, you can go back to that. So just to clarify, it is a unified lacrosse lines around that. You'll play soccer fields, and it is a full-length football field as well. So it was discussed with Stevenson's AD in the district to understand what needed to be on this field to make sure it is flexible and accommodating for all sports, not just one or the other. So multiple lines on it, planning for as many options as possible.
Excellent.
And then
Second field, this is the second field.
It's adjacent to where the baseball and softball area is.
yes, so we replaced the existing regular practice field with synthetic turf, and then we were able to level out a field on the other side of the football stadium that can be used as a practice field as well.
Oh, wow, okay.
Essentially, we took the dirt from here and moved it over there to level it out.
And that's just not turf, it's regular?
Yeah, it'll just be grass.
Regular grass.
Yep.
Right. So we're adding one grass, one turf.
Yeah,
Yes.
nice.
So this is a couple. I think this is 2 weeks ago. So they've essentially poured. Yeah, you can't see the turf anchor, but they poured all the turf anchor and set posts. So now they're doing the final grade there, planning on turf at the end of April, early first week of May right now. Just a little bit of weather dependency, and then hoping to turn it over by the end of May for regular use.
It's for frame of reference for anybody watching on the screen. To the left is the softball field, and then top of the screen there you see a good portion of the baseball field. Just to understand where it's sitting on the property.
Mrs. Costa?
As I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, I'm sure there was consideration for bleachers for the new field, or?
The intent was not for large full-scale bleachers, the mobilized ones for smaller events. There is potential for the lower level of JV practices or games or soccer games where there would be seating there, but not permanent structure. It would be the mobile aluminum bleachers to be moved over there.
Okay.
Mrs. Frank?
And is there going to be, it's really close to the other field, like some type of fencing for the, or is there a fence already there for like the football games that people are not wandering onto it? Is there fencing around it?
Yes.
Is that already in the
Yeah.
scope? Okay.
Yep. There was a fence around it as well at the previous area, or around that area. We're going to be replacing it with a new fence, yes.
Not close enough to see, but they're there. That's it. So.
And have we purchased the modular bleachers that you're mentioning?
I would have to check with the facilities team. I don't know if there was other pieces they already had or if they're planning on purchasing additional
Okay.
pieces.
Okay.
We'll find that out for you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Mrs. Acosta, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to highlight, I know that we're talking about the wear and tear and maintaining our facilities, and I appreciate this addition because, again, there's been a lot of money that's been invested into the general turf or field that gets used, and so removing some of the usage off of that will give it a longer life.
Yep.
So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
That's a great point.
Yep.
The last major set aside for our capital projects fund, you'll see listed on here is a set aside to complete 2021 bond projects, and we're allocating 2.4 million. You know, as we shared, the cost escalations that we see, you know, are, again, have been planned for, but are significant. And so it's a matter of, do we want to scale back with these remaining projects that we have, or do we want to do what we said we did or would do and do it with the same level that we've done in these past summers. And, you know, our thought was we want to continue as we've done and identify other funding sources. And so, again, what better use of our capital projects fund than to round out our bond program? So we're proposing to set aside $2.4 million to finish out our 2021 bond projects. Taking that into consideration, that means that we have utilized all the capital projects funds that we have put into that fund. That would largely take us to about, I think it leaves us with, pretty much everything. Everything's been spent. So short of us selling additional property, which I know we've discussed about putting a pause on that because we don't want to deplete our resources. You know, it would mean putting a pause to some of the yeses that we've been able to do over the last number of years. And I know, as we've discussed during our budget meetings, as we're looking into next year and the following year, we are proposing to not put in a transfer to the capital projects fund. So, short of the board, you know, giving us other direction, of course, we will take your direction. That would be our intent for our proposed budget for 25-26, not to put another transfer in there to our capital projects fund.
And so one of the things that this has done is it's allowed us some relief from the general fund, which has been outstanding. So we have been able to use that where it is intended. And at this point, we feel really proud of the work we've been able to do and wanted to bring you up to date on that. If you have any questions, please let us know. But we thought this detail may be helpful to just bring you and the community up to date on where we are and to really show dollar for dollar. We have primarily expended those funds, and again, we'll be at a point now at a pause where we will not be making a transfer really this year or next year. We're pretty certain into the capital projects fund from the general fund.
Mrs. Bradford.
Thank you. So we would still have a capital projects fund in case we sold some property or did something, but generally we'll keep $0 in there, or do we keep a small kitty of money in
What
there?
would continue to go in there is any sale of miscellaneous property. So again, if we were to sell buses this year, those proceeds would go in there.
Okay.
And again, any excess equipment or furniture, when we have those sales, that would come into this fund.
Okay, perfect. Thank
And we
you.
do that every few years, right? I mean, there's smaller dollar amounts, no doubt, but every 2-3 years, we're selling something, right?
Yeah, honestly, I'd say every year we've got some sales that are
Yes.
taking place. So there's always funds going in there.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Any other questions or comments on this? Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking time to review the capital projects fund, the sinking fund, and the bond funds. I'm pretty sure that most of our community is not aware of the subtlety of school funding and how we can't just take money and use it where we want to. We're very limited. Our hands are tied in many cases on how we can spend the money. And money that comes in from certain sources has to go out in certain ways. And we do follow that. We adhere to it quite rigidly. So this was a great lesson in where money comes from and where it goes. Not all of our money comes from the state. And even those state dollars are limited in how we can spend them. So just the opportunity to help educate our community on where the money comes from and where the money can go and what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. I think that's really beneficial for our community, so thank you.
If I may add to that, I'm glad you brought that up because it is an assurance for our community that we're constantly going back to ballot language as far as the sinking fund and our bond project. And we annually have an external auditor come in. Not only do we have our general everything audited by Plant Moran, we also have been using Yo and Yo to come in and audit our bond and sinking fund. And they make sure that every single expenditure is adhering to our ballot language, what we asked the community to support is how we're using these funds. They also adhere to what the state requirements are for how those funds are used. So it's nice because not only do can you take our word, you can take the word of our auditors that come in and offer their opinion on our finances.
And the per pupil funding from the state does not take into account capital improvements. And so districts are really looking to their community to support them, either through a sinking fund, a bond. In our case, we've been able to also save dollars in the capital projects fund. But the dollars that come to us were never intended by the state to provide funding for either transportation or operations. And so it really does leave districts in a conundrum if they don't have that support, and they're utilizing general fund dollars for these purposes. So it is something that we certainly hope at some point we'll get a serious look at the state level. But at this point, we feel really, really good about the investments we've been able to make thanks to our community.
Mrs. Acosta.
I just wanted to add one. I appreciate that we continue to look back at our 10-year facility plan when making decisions, recognizing that we can't do everything at once when we have such a large district. But also, most importantly, recognizing that one-time funds only get used for one-time expenses. And that, you know, unlike other districts that are looking at those funds to supplement staff and staff salaries, we haven't done that, knowing that our staff would not like to know that they're getting hired or an increase in whatever this year and then not have that guaranteed for the next year. So maintaining that stability for our staff, I think, is really important, but knowing exactly how to utilize our funds. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Any other feedback, Brian or Colin, on the projects or anything else you want to add?
No, once again, we appreciate you guys having us. Great partnership, and unfortunately, this is not the standard at all districts. This is the plan that is laid out here is not the norm, unfortunately. So to see this and coincide with all the funds and understanding there's a plan in place and you're not jumping at the next problem, and don't know if there's a wave of problems hitting you down the corner. This plan helps map that out, and it's been a pleasure working with the team, and we continue to look forward to continue to update it and look around the next corner for the district.
Excellent.
So,
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. We
Thank you very
appreciate it.
much.
yep.
Yes.
We got
Yes, 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 without, yes. You did a great job, even without Phil.
Thank you. Have a
Good
good evening, guys.
evening. Good evening.
And that wraps up Building and Site.
Wonderful job, Mrs. Burton. Yeah, that was great. It worked out really well.
It was really good.
Yeah, we needed to talk about that, so that was perfect. All right, moving on to item 6, the policy committee. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Frank.
Good evening. We have several policies that we're going to look at today, and Mrs. Keats is going to be our coordinator talking to us about each one of these.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I have 4 policies I'm bringing forth this evening. The first is policy GAC, which is listed as staff job-related accident injury, and we are suggesting that we add assault to that title. Would you like me to read the policy? Oh, okay.
Yep.
For the safety and well-being of our staff, the district shall follow established administrative procedures regarding the medical treatment and reporting of job-related injury, illness, or accident, including assault on employees. The Board of Education directs its employees to properly report to their supervisor all school-related incidents involving injury, illness, accident, damage to property, or threatening behavior against an employee. The administration or staff is directed to immediately investigate the incident. All such incidents and the findings of related investigations shall be promptly reported to the Human Resources Department.
Thank you. Any questions on this? Mrs. Burton?
Just for the public that may be listening to this, the reason that we're talking about employees and not about other individuals who may be in our buildings, and students, volunteers, et cetera, is because this is under the personnel section of
That
the
is
policy
correct.
book that we're looking at right now.
That is absolutely correct, yes.
Not that we
the
don't
G-
care about other individuals.
Correct.
This is just personnel
Yes.
language right now.
The G policies indicate personnel, which is what I brought forth this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Just a note, the second paragraph starts, the Board of Education directs its employees.
Oh, yeah, good catch.
Yeah.
We
the
only have
district.
one employee.
Yeah, it's the district.
Is
The Board of Education needs
Oh,
to be
yeah.
changed to the district.
the district.
Mhm.
Good catch.
Mr. Johnson, can you explain to the public why you're making that?
Yes, because as we've been told many, many times through MASB, that the Board of Education only has one employee, and that is our superintendent. The district employs the other employees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is noted.
Thank you, ma'am. Anything else on that one, on GAC?
moving on to GAEB, and that is for first reading, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. GAEB, Mrs.
Okay,
Keats.
yes. So GAEB, we are recommending to remove this policy altogether. And the reason for this, we have taken the contents found within the old GAEB and have added it to GAC, which we have just read. So having two separate policies felt wasn't necessary when we could combine the two and have the same effect.
Yep, great. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
So we do need to still put that on for first reading,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So that'll be first reading as well. And then board policy GAF, Mrs. Keats?
Yes, this one is a little lengthier. Would you like me to still read this one in its entirety? Yes, okay.
Okay.
This is policy GAF, personnel workplace violence. Again, this is just related to personnel. It is a G policy. It reads, Livonia Public Schools is committed to providing students, employees, volunteers, and visitors a safe environment. Accordingly, the school district prohibits acts of violence or threats of violence on school property, at school-sponsored events, or involving school vehicles. Workplace violence is defined as acts or threats of violence against persons or property that is sufficiently severe, offensive, or intimidating to alter the employment conditions or to create a hostile, abusive, or intimidating work environment for employees. Workplace violence includes, but is not limited to, threats, physical attack, or property damage. Specific examples of conduct prohibited under this policy include, but are not limited to, the following: physical attack, such as hitting, fighting, pushing, or shoving another, or throwing objects at an individual; threatening to harm an individual or his/her family, friends, associates, or their property; the intentional destruction or threat of destruction of property owned, operated, or controlled by the district; threatening statements by any means, including, but not limited to, phone calls, letters, or other forms of written or electronic communications; intimidating or attempting to coerce an employee to do wrongful acts; possession or use of firearms, weapons, or other dangerous devices on school property, including but not limited to parking lots; any employee, applicant for employment, student, or board member who has observed or believes that he/she has been the victim of such actions must promptly report the incidents to the applicable school administrator or the administrator of public safety. If for any reason the individual does not feel that he/she can report to the applicable school administrator or the administrator of public safety, he/she shall promptly report to the directors of human resources or superintendent. The school district has the responsibility for investigating and addressing such complaints. All employees are prohibited from possessing on district property or vehicles any item to be deemed a dangerous weapon. For the purposes of this policy, dangerous weapons include, but are not limited to, firearms, explosives, knives with a blade over 3 inches in length, clubs, sticks, martial arts implements, or other items which are intended to be used to cause death or inflict bodily harm. All district property, including buildings, grounds, office areas, classrooms, desks, file cabinets, or storage containers, are for official district use, and employees can have no expectation of privacy in these areas. All district property is at all times subject to examination and inspection by district officials in the discharge of their duty and enforcement of the district's policies. Violations of this policy will result in disciplinary action up to and including discharge.
Great. Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
You can tell you were an elementary school teacher at one point. Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. Under the, I guess you could call it the bulleted list.
Yes.
At the top, where we mentioned threatening statements by any means, including but not limited to phone calls, letters, or other forms of written or electronic communications, we could add in there social media, because people might consider that as its own type of communication.
Okay. I have that noted.
Any other questions? Mrs. Acosta?
I was just gonna say, instead of he, she, can we just write they every time? Any employee applicant for employment, student or board member who has observed or believes that they have been the victim of such action. I don't know. Maybe it was just in the reading of it.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple his, hers, he, she.
I feel like that will stave off a problem down the road when inevitably pronouns come back in fashion.
You're saying to keep he, she, or
No,
to go
to
they.
go with they, because it covers the
It's just easier to
bases.
read.
Yeah.
It's much easier to read.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Johnson?
When we start describing the weapons on the second page, there may be a reason that I'm not aware of, but it says knives with a blade over 3 inches in length. Is there a reason why we limit it to over 3 inches? It seems to me that any blade could do just as much damage, and just leave it knives and not.
I go immediately to the example found in lunchrooms sometimes, where there could be a knife used to cut an apple or something of that nature. That's where my elementary principal, elementary teacher mind goes. In addition, for our student code of conduct, the 3-inch blade is the threshold to be considered a dangerous weapon. So that's where that original, by the state,
By the
yes,
state,
by the
okay.
state. So that's where that number came from. And there are those exceptions, an employee could be cutting something in their lunch and have a knife, and that distinction, I think, is important if we're splitting hairs on that one.
And I do think that somewhere in the back of the abyss that I call a brain, I had seen that language somewhere before, and I thought it might have been some state requirement.
Yes, I believe it's
in
in
JD as well in the student code of conduct.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right,
it is in there
thanks.
for sure.
Other questions, comments on that one?
No.
Mrs. Keats, just where it says in that second paragraph, a person or property that is sufficiently severe.
Yes, so that is actually a phrase that we kind of toyed around and went back and forth with, because it reads curiously,
Yeah.
sufficiently
Yeah.
severe.
Yes.
But then when we got to talking about examples, we really wanted to put the emphasis on the severity of the instance. Perhaps you are, and I'm not minimizing this by any stretch of the imagination, but you could be working in a preschool and get kicked in the shin by a student who is 3 or 4 years old who is having a temper tantrum, and that is not sufficiently severe.
Yeah.
You turn that into a high school student, and that could be severe or sufficiently severe. So that modifier is important, as it might read a bit awkward. We wanted to really emphasize that we're talking about, out of the ordinary instances that, isn't just a very typical behavior.
Okay, that makes sense, Oh, Mrs. Bradford?
Thank you. You have all district property.
What paragraph?
It's in the last page. All district property, including buildings, grounds,
The last
classrooms,
line,
desks,
yep.
file cabinets, storage containers. What about personal, if a teacher brings in personal items or their own personal filing system? What jurisdiction do we have as far as search and seizure?
Sure, if we had, reason to believe that someone was carrying a weapon, that they had brought something to school that was not intended to be here, we would call law enforcement if we were worried about threats of violence and such. If it was a situation where we did not feel comfortable, we would certainly not make administrators investigate in that nature. That's what we have our administrator of public safety and our partnership with the LPD.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Thank you. Back to that second paragraph that you just referenced. I think one of the reasons it's awkward is because the subject is plural, but the verb is singular. Maybe we should make it
Exactly what
an act or threat of violence against persons or property that is sufficiently severe.
Workplace violence is defined as an act
Or threat of violence.
or threat of violence against persons. Okay, got it.
Perfect. Anything else on that one? No. Okay. Thank you. GAF will go on for first reading. And then GBBA, Mrs. Keats.
Yes. So the next one, a GBBA, is also recommended to remove from the board policy book. And the reason for this is we have policy GBC, which is titled the Selection and Recruitment of Professional Personnel, which encompasses all of the qualifications, the certifications, and the proper certificates that folks need to be hired.
Okay.
To be certificated, that is correct.
Perfect. Any questions about that?
No.
No, that'll be on for first reading too then. Fantastic. Thank you, Mrs. Keats, and that wraps up Policy Committee.
Thank you very much.
President Bradford.
Thank you, Mrs. Frank. Thank you, Mrs. Keats. Okay, we're moving on to item 7, the Personnel Committee. Mr. McFarland.
Yes, unless there's been a change I'm not aware of, we do not have anything for the Personnel Committee this evening.
Okay, and moving on to item 8, the Legislative Committee. Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you, President Bradford. Although we have nothing listed on the agenda, I was hoping that Mrs. Oquist would provide us with an update.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Jarvis. There is quite a bit happening, so I have things on a couple of different fronts. I know the board had inquired about the April 3rd communication from the Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, letter that came to each state's Department of Education state superintendent. That letter did not come to local districts, it did come to each state. And in it, districts were asked to certify that they were not engaging in illegal DEI programs within the state, and then subsequently, the state superintendents were asked to send that letter to each individual school district and ask each local superintendent to certify the same and to send the letter back to them, and that they were required to send en masse to the Department of Education. On Friday, there was a development in the afternoon where the Department of Education has put a stay on that certification request until April 24th. And so states we've granted an additional 10-day extension, making the new deadline April 24th. And also, the ACLU announced an agreement to a lawsuit that would prohibit the Department of Education from taking any action related to the DEI certification or the earlier February 14th Dear Colleague letter that I had shared with you at that time until at least April 24th. So under that agreement, no states and no individual entities would face any investigations or penalties for failing to return the certification, and in that time period are not required to return the certification. So the underlying litigation on the case continues, but they have agreed through an injunction to that portion. Also, last Friday was a busy day on this topic, State Superintendent Rice shared an update with local districts that they had sent a letter to the Department of Education regarding the request for certification, indicating that the state was already in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and was already implementing the regulations. Therefore, and this is, I'm really summarizing a 2.5-page letter. Therefore, MDE feels that they have already provided the requisite guarantee that it has complied and will continue to comply with Title VI and its implementing regulations. And so that letter served as their response, as opposed to signing and certifying the letter that had originally been sent. And at that time, the state superintendent also indicated he would not be distributing the letter to local districts and asking local districts to certify and sign that. So we do not expect to receive that in local districts in Michigan. At this time, I believe as of today, even though there was the stay put on and the deadline was extended, as of today, 16 states have indicated they intend to sign. 11 states have declined to sign the certification, and the remaining states are either still reviewing or haven't indicated their indications publicly on the matter. And so there, if you would like, there's a map I can share with you with regard to the states that have denied certification have intended to sign the certification, and some of which have also sent the certification request to local school districts. So as of today, that will not be happening in Michigan, and that will not be happening in Livonia Public Schools. I will certainly keep you up to date. There are a number of lawsuits pending with regard to that request. I wanted to also share that, again, that pause in enforcement provides immediate relief to schools across the country, but the broader legal challenge will continue. The department has also further agreed that it will not initiate any enforcement actions based on either the February 14th letter or the request for certification. So the lawsuit that has been put forward challenges the Education Department's directive on multiple legal grounds. Specifically, the lawsuit argues that the Education Department has overstepped its authority by imposing vague legal restrictions that potentially violate due process in the First Amendment, limiting academic freedom and restricting educators' ability to teach and students' rights to learn, and unlawfully dictating curriculum and educational programs which would exceed their legal mandate. So quite a bit happening at the federal level, and with regard to both state lawsuits and federal lawsuits that have been filed on this topic. So I know your initial question was, would Michigan be signing this? Would local districts be asked to sign it? So what I can tell you now at this point is Michigan is not signing the certification, but has provided rationale for that they believe they are in compliance with the regulations of Title VI and of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and we will not, as individual districts in Michigan, be asked to sign it. So I wanted to give you that update. Any questions on that before I move on to another topic? No? Okay. We're following it closely. Even when I was at our conference on Friday, it changed from morning to afternoon with the injunction. So we will stay up to date on that. This I wanted to bring to you because we have a contingent through K-12 Alliance. You know, our district has been involved. I have been involved in K-12 Alliance, an advocacy group for public education, for quite some time. They are asking districts to consider a resolution. We have passed this previously, just this as it may be familiar to you. This wording is very similar, but there is a group that will be going to Washington to advocate to restore full IDEA funding for special education, and they would like to have our representative districts pass a resolution stating such. So I'd like to ask you if we could take a moment to review this, if you'd like to read through it. I will just highlight then a few specific areas. Then I'd like you to take this next week to consider it, and if you would consider adding this, being comfortable adding this to our agenda for next week, we would like to bring this resolution forward on behalf of Livonia Public Schools.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Oquist regarding this resolution?
Still reading it.
Yep.
So, hold on.
Absolutely, we should pass this.
Early resident, I think it was maybe 3 years ago. Mrs. Jarvis, may I highlight a couple of specific areas?
By all means.
In paragraph 6, it starts out, whereas when Individuals with Disability Act was passed, in 1975, the federal government committed to pay 40% of the average per pupil expenditure for special education to ensure that every child with a disability would have access to high-quality education. So to date, they have not exceeded paying 10.7% of the cost. So it was intended to gradually progress until the federal government reached the point of paying 40% of the cost, with the state and county taking up the remaining portion. So at this point, IDEA the goal of it has never been met, and it is currently being funded at just over 10%. So it is significantly underfunded. As you know, we service approximately 13% of our students who have disabilities in Livonia Public Schools, and the impact of the underfunding has taken a significant responsibility for our general fund. So we have generally funded about an additional $10 million out of the general fund to fully fund our special education costs. We do that proudly and without reservation because our focus is on meeting the needs of every child. And whether or not we have been fully funded by the county, by the state, or the federal government, Livonia Public Schools has made it a priority to provide that funding. But what we do know is if Congress were to act on this and the federal government were to take on their responsibilities, we would be able to have that funding provided as it was promised several years ago. So again, we have a group from K-12 Alliance and a group from across the country that will be gathering in Washington. Mr. Johnson and I thought it was approximately 3 years ago that we passed a very similar resolution asking for full funding for IDEA. It did not happen at that time, but I think one of the things that's important, and I know my colleagues feel very similarly, is that we cannot give up on this advocacy. And it's something that is really inherently the responsibility, the collective responsibility of each of these entities to be sure that we have the proper funding to meet the needs of our students with disabilities. So if you are comfortable with this, I'd like to recommend bringing it forward next week for your consideration for approval.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. I, for one, fully support this. And I just have just a thought. If this was included in the bill as passed, that the government has to pay the 40%, and if they have not done that, I'm wondering if anybody has sued them yet. Because that would be a violation of the act.
This is 50 years later.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Lots of people are suing them right now.
Can't keep count.
Yeah.
it's just amazing to me that if it's part of the bill itself, if it's in the language of the bill, then it has to be followed. And if they haven't done it, it just blows me away that, like you say, Madeline, that it's been 50 years. If nobody's done it, the question is why?
Right.
Any other questions
And
or
that's all I
comments?
have to say about that.
My question is, and I haven't read the original act from 1975, but if it says 40%, are they talking about 40% of 1975's amount or 40% annually? So those dollar amounts would change each year.
It would. It's the average cost to educate a pupil with disabilities. And so whatever that average cost is for that year, the intent was to be that IDEA would cover 40% of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Burton.
Just in general, over what's been going on as it impacts education. Lots of things have impacted pretty much every walk of life, but the last couple of months as they impact education, not all of us, but a couple of us have been asked occasionally, why isn't the school board or the district doing something? Believe me, we are. But one of the things, as Mrs. Oquist mentioned a few minutes ago, is these things are changing by the day and by the parts of days. We also need to make sure that we're acting in a manner that is in the best interest of the Livonia Public Schools. And until some of these things begin to shake out, that's still up in the air. If we push for X solution to a proposed problem and the problem veers by tomorrow, what we're pushing for may not be in Livonia Public Schools' best interest or the interest of education in the country as a whole. So I don't want folks to think that we aren't doing anything. This is a daily topic. Consulting frequently with our attorneys, with other educators in the state of Michigan, but we have to make advocating for what it looks like it will be in the best interest of students. But screaming something publicly may or may not be in the best interest of our students. So please don't misunderstand and think that that's the district doing nothing. This is the district trying to work with the folks that have the most control over the situation and come up with the best solutions that we need to advocate for on a daily basis, and those things may be changing day by day.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton.
And we can still contact our legislators and
As we
encourage
have
them
been.
to
Yes.
support, and our community.
Yep.
Contact your legislators and encourage them to support public education. Anything else, Mrs. Oquist?
No, thank you for allowing me to add those.
Thank you for the update and for the resolution. Does anyone have any other questions regarding the legislative committee? Then that concludes the committee's work. President Bradford.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. All right, as I'm going to turn the page over, there is nothing on the other page, which tells me that we have reached the end of our Committee of the Whole meeting for this evening for April 14th, and we wish you all a very, very good evening. And we'll see you next week, hopefully, for our April 21st regular meeting. Come see us again. Thank you very much and have a good night.